Hello and welcome back to Into the Lore of Dead by Daylight. Today we will be talking about the Saw chapter with its respective survivor and killer, the survivor being Detective David Tapp and the killer being Amanda Young, or aka the Pig, and the map being the Gideon Meatpacking Plant. Gideon Meatpacking Plant had long lain derelict before its original designer, John Kramer, moved back in, transforming it into the workshop where he would devise his many games and the location where those games would play out. Surveillance cameras now cover every angle of the building, reporting the progress of test subjects to a bank of monitors, a grainy testament of life and death. In the workshop, hundreds of carefully rendered plans hang from every wall. Half-completed machinery litters the worktops, next to the tools that help create them. Mannequins are everywhere, their blank eyes staring impassively at their dismembered brethren, strapped into test rigs or already destroyed by successful trials. In many ways, the plant is unchanged. It still rings to the sound of buzzsaws and sliced flesh. The drains will still clog with congealed blood, fat, and hair. The building's occupants have always been dead meat, but now they have a chance at transformation, a chance to emerge back into the world, reborn as something better. And if they fail, there's always the drain. David Tapp is an obsessed detective, able to locate and complete objectives faster. His personal perks, tenacity, detective's hunch, and stakeout make him an objective focus and able to rapidly recover. His perks are all about determination and not giving up. He is dead set on reaching his goal and survive no matter what. Detective David Tapp was one of the good guys. His determination to see killers brought to justice and their victims avenged had led him through a long and respected career. When he first saw the details of the Jigsaw case, it seemed like many others, more grisly and macabre, sure, but just another lunatic with a penchant for the overdramatic who will soon be behind bars. A stroke of insight brought Tapp and his partner, Detective Stephen Singh, to an abandoned mannequin factory where they discovered Jigsaw's lair. They apprehended the man, but he managed to escape before being unmasked, slashing Tapp's throat as he did so, leaving his partner, Singh, in pursuit, but fell victim to a booby trap. Tapp had failed to go by the book on this one occasion, entering the lair without a warrant, and had resulted in a detective's death. He was discharged from the force and left with a ruined throat and a crippling guilt. He channeled that guilt into an obsession. He will find the killer, stop the murders, vindicate himself, and avenge his friend and colleague. Following the evidence trail brought him to Dr. Lawrence Gordon, and he staked out the doctor's apartment, sure that he would find some evidence of guilt. Then he saw a stranger at Gordon's window and heard gunshots. Tapp confronted him and the man fled, with the pursuit leading to an industrial building. Tapp's age caught up with him. A fight that he would easily have won in his younger days ended with Tapp taking a bullet to the chest. Slumping to the floor, he saw only failure. He had failed his partner and the other victims. Whoever the killer was, Tapp had been unable to stop him. More would die and it would be his fault. He let the rage and guilt consume him and closed his eyes for the final time. Beneath him, the concrete floor softened. He dug his fingers into the ground, feeling dirt and leaves. Where his chest had been wet with blood, the shore was now dry and the pain had gone. His eyes opened into a darkened sky and jagged, searching fingers of branches. Screams echoed through the forest and a new determination filled him. His mind was clear for the first time in months. Victims needed to be avenged, killers thwarted. He didn't know what this place was, but he was still a cop. And he always would be. He had a job to do. Of course, before Detective Tapp entered the entity's realm, we have some additional lore about him. So, let's let our friend the Observer talk about it.
Weariness clings to Detective David Tapp as he exits the car. He straightens his shoulders and sucks in a deep breath, but he knows it's still there, in his eyes. They always betray him. The stroll up the sidewalk to Mr. and Mrs. Serenko's home is brief. He wishes he could stretch it out, take each step slower than the last, but this was his choice. He volunteered to tell them their missing son, Shane, is dead. Should have taken the vacation. Could be on the beach frying up slabs of meat. What the hell was I thinking? He was so close to getting on that plane. At the airport, waiting to board, his wife's hand reaches out, locks her fingers around his, squeezes tight. He squeezes back without thinking. In his other hand is the coroner's report on the Jigsaw killer's latest victim. He promises he'll only glance over it, then stow it for the rest of the week. Female, 37 years old, fragment of a drill bit found in the wound on her hip. Unconventional design. Custom made for a company that went belly up in the 80s. Tapp remembers the company's logo. Grew up a few blocks from their factory. Could the place still be abandoned? It's too important to leave to someone else. He can cancel the plane tickets, take the loss, and try again in a few days. He turns to tell his wife. A tear streams down her face before he even opens his mouth. It sounds like someone else's voice when he says it. Your son Shane is dead. There's an outpouring of emotion on the parents' faces. Shock, devastation, agony. Too much for a single word. It's as if they're cycling through trauma with each second, pouring it from their bodies in howls and cries. Tapp stands and waits, tries to ignore the discomfort, reminds himself that what they're going through is far worse. He's a spectator, torn between offering condolences and leaving them to their grief. Either choice lacks sincerity. All these years and he still doesn't know what to do. No one ever does. The father screams, and it reminds him of Shane. It brings him back to where it started, as memories from hours past take over. He remembers it clearly. He arrives at the factory. It's abandoned. He snoops around, checking for signs of forced entry. 20 minutes pass. No footprints, broken windows, or snapped fences. A nagging doubt starts from the back of his mind and pushes forward. Left your wife behind to trounce around an empty lot in some old-as-shit building? This is one hell of a vacation. There's an apology forming somewhere, but it sounds no different than the past few. Still, better put something together before he heads home. She's had hours to talk to her mom, and that woman will fan the flames just to watch him choke on the smoke. Get some flowers, or too cliché? Yeah. Well past the point of floral arrangements counting as a get-out-of-jail-free card. Anyway, there's no... A sudden noise. A scream? It was barely audible, in a range that makes him question if his mind is playing tricks on him. Hold up. Don't rush this one. Take a close... screw it. He needs to be right about this. Close the case so he can go home, tell her it's over. He's sorry. He messed up. He's a bastard. That's behind him. He'll make it right. Just stick around. He'll make it right. Shoulder up. He takes a running start and slams into a rickety door. Mrs. Serenko asks him to come in and talk over tea. He'd rather find a bar stool and a place to hang his head, somewhere where only a waitress will interrupt. He wants nothing more than to decline the invitation. Of course, anything I can do. I'm happy to stay and talk. He settles onto a dusty couch, letting his tea go cold on the side table, chai spice. Wife used to make it for him when they started dating. Didn't like it then either, but he'd drink it anyway. It made her happy. Maybe it made him happy too. Hearing the kettle whistle, sipping at a teacup, seemed like the kind of thing married people do. Can't remember when she stopped serving it. Shane's parents smile between tears as they recount stories of their son. Every now and then reality hits and one of them chokes up, excusing him or herself for a minute. Tapp moves his hand alongside his radio, hoping that a voice on the other end requests his help. Mrs. Serenko dabs her eyes as she recalls the last year of Shane's life. Such a gentle boy, that one. He was broken-hearted over his fiancée leaving. Wanted to make things right with her, but never really did. She just kind of got away. And he fell apart. Dropped out of college, drifted day to day without a path to stand on. Never really recovered. Stopped living, I guess. Lost that sparkle. Tapp reacts with a consoling look, but inside, he's mentally recording the information for his report. Testing those who have given up on life. It fits Jigsaw's M.O. Shane lost his will and abandoned his future. That's some kind of sin in this madman's book. The sick asshole strapped the poor kid into a trap to teach him a lesson. Discomfort being necessary to mend a broken heart. Could be. At this point, he knows Jigsaw better than he knows anyone. Shit. Anyone. He tries to rattle the thought from his head, finds some other memory to torture himself on. Mrs. Serenko's voice in the background decides for him. Shane. He had the chance to save him, and he blew it. The scene plays over again in his head, beating against his skull like a bad hangover. His eyes adjust to the darkness of the abandoned factory. Slivers of light pierce the gaps in the boarded-up windows. Stale air fills his lungs. He paces forward, moves between a row of shelves, looks to the floor, sees footprints in the thick dust. With a calm, steady movement, he unholsters his gun, stops, listens, waits to see if the intruder will give themselves away. Nothing but silence. Takes another step forward and metal screeches on the concrete floor. The shelf beside Tapp leans towards him, looming tall, heavy. Adrenaline takes over. Time appears to slow. For a millisecond, he intercepts a thought intended for his subconscious. Will she cry when they tell her I'm dead? Neurons fire for one singular purpose. Jump, shift weight, push off, extend arms, brace for impact. He hits the ground hard. A deafening crash echoes around him. He looks back to see the shelf collapsed where he was a split second ago, his gun pinned beneath it. Footsteps barrel along the floor. A cloaked figure flees into the shadows. Tapp jumps to his feet and gives chase. He sprints after the fleeing figure, trying to catch a glimpse beyond their cloak. He shouts to stop, knowing it's futile, but... Mr. Tapp? Officer? He's abruptly pulled from his thoughts. Mrs. Serenko patiently holds a photo out to him. He doesn't want to see it. He'd rather turn his attention to his tea, take a cold sip and stare at residue swimming along the bottom. He knows he can't. As much as the guilt rises in his throat like bile, he knows he has to play his role in this ritual. He takes the photo. A young Shane, dressed for prom, smiles at him, a bright, eager grin. But what Tapp sees quickly fades until all that's there is a murdered boy, pain and fear etched onto his face. Then he remembers. There was something else in Shane's eyes when he first saw him. Hope. The belief that maybe he would be saved. That one hurts most. Tapp chases the cloaked figure into a dimly lit room, electronic beeps ringing out as he enters. He stumbles, nearly freezing in shock at what's before him. A terrified young man stands 15 feet away, metal hooks piercing his back and arms, keeping him from moving. A jackhammer is propped in front of him, chained and locked to his neck and torso, its tip pointing into the left side of his chest. On the wall behind him is the picture of a heart, broken in two. A timer counts down, 45 seconds. Shane screams, stretching for a ring of keys dangling in front of him, hooks ripping at his back and arms. Blood trickles down his body. Tapp runs to him. Hold on, kid. Breathe. Breathe. Don't move. Tapp grabs the key ring, picks a key at random, shoves it into the lock around Shane's neck, forces it. Nothing. Grabs another. Useless. Hands shake, looks at the timer. Another one. No luck. Footsteps patter along the concrete. The cloaked figure emerges from the shadows and makes a run for it. There's still time to catch them. Shane screams, his hurried breath making his words incoherent. Tapp looks back to him. Damn, hold still. Almost got you. Another key that won't work. Or was that the one he tried before? That can't be right. Which? The cloaked figure races towards an emergency exit. There's no time for Tapp to think. Tapp stands at the front door as Mrs. Serenko puts a hand on his shoulder, offering him a sad smile. She thanks him for being with Shane in his final moments, for providing what comfort and support he could. I know that made a difference for him. Shane never did well with being alone. Tapp's mouth dries out, heart drops into his stomach. He tries to form a word, but only clears his throat. He nods and hopes that's enough. Pulling his jacket on, he turns, tries to find his footing as he paces away from the house, the walk longer than he remembers. He wants to shout, or collapse silently, maybe both. He reaches for his phone, scrolls to his wife's number. This was the routine. Call her. Tell her it was a rough night. He'd bring home ramen, maybe some beer, stay up, talk, watch reruns on TV, wake up on the couch wondering who fell asleep first. His thumb hovers over the send button, but he can't bring himself to press it. Too late for that. No matter where she is, she's gone. Long gone. Just him and Jigsaw now. The realization shakes him. The burden pushes down, unconfessed, unconsoled. Without her, the memory of what really happened to Shane burrows in and festers.
The pig is a tormenting killer, able to crouch into stealth mode, then ambush survivors from a short distance. She can also apply reverse bear traps to down survivors, forcing them to remove it before the timer runs out, triggering an instant death. Her personal perks, Scourge Hook, Hangman's Trick, Surveillance, and Make Your Choice, give her more map control and expose altruistic survivors. When John Kramer, better known as Jigsaw, planned for his son to be born during the Chinese zodiac year of the pig, he wanted it to represent fertility and rebirth, a new beginning for him and his wife, and the start of a charmed life for his son. But that plan was shattered on the night that a junkie broke into his wife's clinic, hoping to score. After this event resulted in the death of his unborn son, John finally caught up with the junkie, making him his first test subject, and the pig was changed forever too. It became a representation of the disease that was rotting John from the inside, a reminder that we are just meat unless we elevate ourselves by our actions, by grasping life from the jaws of death. The pig became a vessel, an agent of Jigsaw, conveying the subjects to their test. For some of those who emerged victorious, the pig could still be a rebirth into their new lives as apprentice, even disciples of Jigsaw. That was the case for Amanda Young, a troubled soul whose life has been a catalog of harm both to herself and those around her. That changed when she faced and bested Jigsaw's test, deciding her life was worth something. She became devoted to Jigsaw's cause, ready to take over when cancer consumed him. But she became more dependent on John, her anguish at his impending death combining with belief that Their test subjects were incapable of saving themselves, of being reborn in the crucible of the games. Seeing this, John presented her with another game, another chance to save herself, but Amanda let her rage and jealousy rule her actions. She failed the test and took a bullet as a consequence. Bleeding out on the tiled floor, darkness engulfed Amanda's vision, accompanied by a sound like creaking wood. Then she was in a forest, once more viewing the world through the eyes of a pig. Trees surrounded her, their branches clawing at her from all sides. Waves of panic washed over her, and she could hear her breath reverberating inside the mask. Had she been damned? Cursed to spend her days here in the guise? Or maybe there was another test. Maybe she hadn't failed at all. John always thought one step ahead of everyone else, planned for every eventuality, and he would never give up on her, surely. Jigsaw may have gone, but he had passed her on to another, a being for whom she would be the pig again. Ultimately, she saw now that she had been right in the choices she had made. The time for games was over. There was no chance of redemption for any of them. They were meat, and meat was destined to die. Now, before Amanda entered the fog, there was one memory she had, a test that she was ultimately willing to go beyond. Let's see what happened. Observer, take it away.
Amanda feels her heart racing as the test subject screams on the television screen. She observes him as he looks down at the see-through cylinder pressed against his bare abdomen. Several rats are trapped inside the cylinder, screeching against the subject's skin. The thermometer inside displays 97 degrees Fahrenheit. The rats are agitated. Stuck between the glass and his stomach, they cannot escape the heat. Amanda is pleased to see the subject cry as rats claw at his skin. Then he succumbs to his flaw, activating the trap's last mechanism. Amanda feels a jolt of adrenaline as a board rises inside the cylinder glued to the subject's abdomen, opposite to the ravenous rats, letting through a hissing cobra. The snake uncoils, and the rats go wild. They claw and gnaw madly at the subject's stomach to escape the snake. One rat ventures inside the subject's gut. Amanda smiles as she watches him scream in agony. Game over. Amanda feels exhilarated as she rushes to the next room to find John Kramer. But her heart sinks when she is welcomed by John's exhausted frown. He wipes the sweat off his brow and praises her efforts, but criticizes her plan. Suffering seemed to be the trap's sole design. Pain can be used as punishment, but first it must be offered as redemption. Amanda frowns. After all her hard work, how could he doubt her? His teachings are law. This new chance in life is too precious for her to squander away. She looks up as John leans over the table to catch his breath. His inhale turns into a coughing fit, and she hands him a bottle of water. Amanda can see that their time together is limited. There can be no room for mistakes. She will be his successor and continue what he started. John staggers inside the meat plant. Dark circles are under his eyes, as if he has not slept in weeks. Amanda usually sleeps no more than 4 hours per night, less so before a test. The excitement keeps her wide awake. Amanda's eyes fall on the large folder in John's hands. Another test? John nods. He is compiling information on Grace Wright, an amiable politician campaigning for the upcoming election. Amanda watches him as he massages his temples. He looks worse than last week. How long did she have to learn everything about his craft? A few years? A couple of months? To protect their legacy, she needs to be ready when the time comes. She must continue John's work as Jigsaw, the successor. Amanda reaches for the folder in his hands. Let me show you what I can do. John's tired eyes stare at Amanda, who holds his gaze firmly. She is ready, and they are running out of time. He nods reluctantly. Amanda turns on the television and sees Grace Wright's beaming face on the screen. The elections are tonight. Several sheets slide over the printer's tray, falling at Amanda's feet. She snatches them from the ground. Earlier today, she broke into Grace's inbox to find her flaw. The test must be perfect. Perhaps John will be able to rest once he is convinced that his life's work is in capable hands. Amanda pores over a series of documents and emails exchanged between Grace and a lawyer from 10 years ago. A certain Ben Fairfax threatened to expose a scandal relating to when Grace joined the city council. The lawsuit was settled swiftly. But the emails continued between Grace and her lawyer. Amanda found a report showing that Xanax Industries, a copper exporter in the area, poured waste directly into the Hilford River, contaminating the groundwater. The city's decayed century-old water lines were unable to filter the filth. Grace covered up the lawsuit to avoid adding to the city's increasing taxes. For 10 years, filth has been poured into the water of Grace's oblivious voters. Amanda looks down at the glass of water sitting on her desk. She dumps it into the sink and grabs a bottle of vodka from the freezer. Icy bitterness rolls off her tongue, hitting her palate with a herbal kick. Not an ideal way to hydrate, but safer than Hilford tap water. On the television, confetti are falling on Grace's smooth brown hair. The polls are in, and Grace Wright has been elected as mayor. Amanda receives a cryptic message from John. When she meets him at the Gideon meat plant, her doubts are confirmed. John looks pale and frail. The side effects of his medication seem as draining as the disease itself. His gait is slow and meticulous, as if he is calculating the cost of each step. Amanda grabs his arm to help him sit down. He can no longer conceal his pain, not from her. She examines him as he catches his breath. Beads of sweat are purling above his brow. Her leader, her mentor, her father is dying. Amanda clenches her fist. What will I do without him? Panic twists her stomach in knots, and then another sensation. Something akin to trepidation. No, excitement. A thrilling rush of freedom. Complete control. John asks about Grace's test, and Amanda reassures him. His legacy is in good hands. She will prove it to him. Amanda's temples are throbbing. It has been weeks since she slept more than 2 hours per night. She pops a painkiller in her mouth and winces as the pill scrapes her dry throat. She ignores the bitter taste lingering in her mouth as it melts. No time for sleep or water. She is scouting the sinuous tunnel network under the Gideon meat plant for Grace's test. The throbbing grows acute, and Amanda massages her temples while walking. Her head feels as if it's going to explode, but she cannot stop. John needs her. This migraine will cease soon enough. Her mentor has no such privilege. She has little time left by his side. Eventually, all tests will be her responsibility alone. When the time comes, she must be ready. Amanda points her flashlight at the blueprint of Gideon's underground and retraces her steps. While examining the vast tunnel network, another thought crosses her mind. Soon, Gideon will be her domain. A thrilling sensation of alarm and excitement follows that thought. Her flashlight illuminates a familiar fork in the tunnel. Left leads to the underground bathroom, and right leads to the meat plant's wastewater. To follow in John's footsteps, she must craft a test that aligns with Grace's flaw. A corrupt ambition to rise and become mayor while sacrificing the health of thousands. It is time to give the mayor a dose of her own poison. Amanda crawls into the tunnel on her right. Amanda is hiding in Grace's bathroom behind the drawn shower curtain. Her heart is racing as she waits for the perfect moment to strike. This is her favorite part. Adrenaline is flowing, heightening her senses. She feels like she can take on the entire world without fatigue or pain. She feels awakened, despite not having slept for days. Waiting for her prey, she feels alive and powerful, every second stretching into a blissful, intense high. That is the real power of John's teachings, a second chance at living in a heightened state of mind. Amanda hears the door creak open in the hall. She strains to hear if someone is with Grace. A pair of footfalls confirm what Amanda already knows from Grace's schedule. The mayor is alone tonight. The bathroom door screeches open. As soon as Grace steps inside, Amanda strikes. A fight follows between the two women as water spills over the rim of the bathroom sink. Amanda slams Grace's face into the mirror. Grace shrieks and headbutts Amanda, and a jolt of pain courses through her masked nose. Amanda stumbles backward, but the adrenaline kicks in. She is ready for this. Grace pounces on her and grabs her pig mask, but Amanda elbows Grace in the gut and leaves her gasping. As Grace catches her breath, Amanda rolls over and slams Grace's head into the heated floor. Grace is knocked out. Amanda is toying with a water bottle made of glass. A pile of keys lies on the table in front of her. None of them matter, except for one. She should insert this key inside the bottle, but Amanda hesitates. If she does, Grace could use it to escape. A freshly elected mayor would make a useful ally and a powerful successor for John. Amanda's grip tightens on the bottle. She would do anything for her mentor, even betray his teachings. Redemption should only be granted to a select few, after all. She pockets the real key and drops a fake inside the bottle. Then she throws the bottle into a pool of meat wastewater. This is Amanda's design as the rightful and only successor of John Kramer. Game on.